Turks, Cenk, Uygur, Yasmin, Aliyah Khan with you guys. So Yasmin is on Rebel HQ. You know that. Go check that out every day on YouTube. You crazy dog. Are we gonna have a good show today? Oh, again, I don't know if you're crazy or not asking me questions like this. / you didn't ask it. Okay. We've got the Trump administration falling apart at the seams, caught them in a bunch of lies. You're gonna love that. That's fun for everybody, except the American people. Are they really populist or not? We caught them on that too. So we got a story about what are they gonna do to cut from the average guy. And they claim they're gonna give tax cuts to the average guy. Is that right? We'll talk about it. Later in the program, men cutting their eyelashes so they look more masculine. Good idea or bad idea? Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit later. And speaking of good idea or bad idea, Marjorie Taylor Greene on the Young Turks tonight. What on God's green earth is happening? Get it, God's green earth? Okay, so that's at 8 o'clock Eastern. That's for everybody. Make sure you stick around and check that out. We're gonna have a conversation about foreign policy, Iran, Israel, freedom of speech. In fact, we're asking you guys, I mean, it's too late, but it's still fun for everybody. We'd asked us about Steve Bannon, but didn't have him on, even though you guys said to do it. But this was open to everyone, not just members. At tyt.com, we're asking, should we have Marjorie Taylor Greene on the Young Turks? Okay, so, and then when we get to the interview, I might quote the poll and ask her, oh, look at that, a lot of people saying yes already. Lots of folks, okay. So, we'll give the results to her maybe in the interview at 8 o'clock tonight. Okay, so Yas, what do you got for us? How you doing?
I'm doing very well. We do have a lot of stories to get to. I think producer Taylor was feeling very ambitious tonight. So let's get it right into the first story. Lots to talk about.
There are 18 very important trading relationships. We are currently negotiating with 17 of those trading partners. China, we have not engaged in negotiations with as of yet.
So today, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent admitted in a congressional hearing that the United States and China are not actually engaged in any kind of trade negotiations. And that might be a little bit surprising to some of you because Trump has been suggesting that that is exactly what has been happening. And we will show you those receipts in just a little bit. But Cenk, did you expect that negotiations with China were going to take this long to get off the ground? Because we've been hearing since he first launched into these tariffs and caught all of that immediate backlash that don't worry, they're banging down my door trying to negotiate with me.
Yeah, okay, so there's two parts of the story. One is the hilarious lies that they were caught in. Joe, we're in the middle of negotiations, it's happening, right? Joe, okay, didn't even talk to them once. Okay, so we'll get to some of the receipts on that in a second. And then the second part of the story is, wait, are these tariffs really gonna stay around? Because now some Trump supporters are like, I'm hurt, dog, don't ask me if I'm all right. And does he have a plan? Oh, you know what the answer to that is. But so let's air it all out. Let's see the Republicans who are starting to panic and whether they actually are negotiating or not. So yes, give us the details.
Yeah, so there has been some debate as to whether or not the United States and China are actually having these talks that Trump has been toting about for a while. So here's reporting from the New York Times. It says, in an interview with Time, Trump said Xi had called him, though he declined to say when, and asserted that his team was in active talks with China on a trade deal. Oops. Asked about the interview outside the White House, the president reiterated that he had spoken with the Chinese president numerous times, but he refused to answer when pressed on whether any call had happened after he imposed tariffs this month. Oops. So when Trump asked about negotiations today, things sounded a little bit different. Take a look.
Earlier this morning, Capitol Hill Secretary Bessent said that there had been no negotiations yet with China. You have said something different.
They want to meet, but they want to negotiate and they want to have a meeting, and we'll be meeting with them at the right time.
But you haven't met with them yet.
I have not met with them.
Well, you know what Trump says, we are playing the long game here, right? We got to deal with the short-term pain for the long-term gain. And he is insisting that even if trade completely stops between the United States and China, it will be a net positive. So look at that.
And by not trading, we're losing nothing. So we're saving $1 trillion. It's a lot. We're losing more than 5 billion a day. $5 billion a day. You don't talk about that. And right now, we're going to be at a point very soon where we're making money every day. Look,
how soon?
We were losing hundreds of billions of dollars with China. Now we're essentially not doing business with China. Therefore, we're saving hundreds of billions of dollars. Very simple.
Is it that simple? Also, why does he speak that way? He's very hard to listen to. But okay, but let's take a look at what the actual implications of these tariffs are. This is from CNN. It says ships now pulling into US harbors from China are the first to be subject to the massive tariffs that America is imposing on most Chinese imports. Many of them are half full. That means in a matter of weeks, consumers will face higher prices and shortages of certain items. So yeah, a lot of people are saying, all these prices are supposed to spike. I'm not seeing it. It's going to be a little bit of a delayed reaction, and that delay seems to be catching up with us very shortly. So in the meantime, Americans are continuing to buy goods that were previously warehoused in the United States, but those stockpiles are starting to run out. Imports to the United States during the second half of 2025 are expected to fall at least 20% year over year, according to the National Retail Federation. The decline from China will be even starker. JP Morgan expects a 75 to 80% drop in imports from there. Yesterday, a Trump-supporting owner of a clothing store actually begged the president to help out small businesses just like his. Take a look at this.
President Trump, as a longtime supporter of your mission and to make America great again, I want to be a part of that with you. But e-commerce companies all across the United States, we need more time. Give us a 90-day off-ramp to get off of our China goods and just tell us the plan. If you tell us the plan, we can operate and we can know what to do. The hard part about everything that's happening right now is we're trying to manage our business from day to day, and that's very difficult. And a lot of small businesses, they don't have the cash flow to get through a 90-day negotiation, and it's gonna devastate a lot of businesses like Cuts. I'm in a group chat with $1 billion worth of small businesses, and there's several in there that are telling me, hey, Stephen, 30 days or 60 days, we might not be able to make it. There's been too many adjustments to the supply chain that are just being really devastating on our business. 145% is essentially an embargo, and by cutting off our products to be able to sell them, it's going to be really difficult.
It's almost a little bit sad to watch him. I can't tell if I feel bad for him because he said that he's been a longtime supporter of Trump and of MAGA, but I don't know what he expected was going to happen. Also, I've said it before, for a presidential administration to enact all these widespread tariffs, right, on an entire population, not just here in the United States, but around the world, you can't just do something without having some kind of contingencies in place, some ways that are going to support the populace, the people who are going to be most affected by it. All of this feels very slapdash and very irresponsibly laid out. They just did it and said, whatever happens, happens. And they didn't seem to have any considerations for the business owners or just the regular average people who are going to be the most negatively impacted by all these tariffs. And that's really just most of Americans, whenever you consider that we're all gonna see the prices at the grocery stores going up, if they haven't happened already, very, very soon. What do you think? I mean, this is obviously very disingenuous coming from the Trump administration, but where do you think we're headed with all of this? What are your thoughts generally about these tariffs now that things are what is it? What do they say? The roosters are going to come home to roost? That's not it, but the
chickens are going to come home to roost. So let's dive into it. First Trump, then this brother from Cuts, because I think he's a really interesting example. So I want to walk you through how his business is going to get affected, because it's going to affect so many other businesses and the entire economy. So first on Trump, he says, China's been calling me. No, they haven't. They put out a statement saying, no, seriously, we haven't called Trump at all, and we have no interest in calling Trump. And so they keep saying, no, it's okay, we're winning this one. China thinks, brother, we got a 100-year plan. You're going to be out of office in 3.5 years. I mean, even if the tariffs lasted that long, which there's no way in the world that they will, have at it, Hoss. Because what the Chinese are saying and thinking is, we thought this through, and I bet you haven't. And I bet you're not ready to brace for impact and have all the different economic consequences hit the US and brush it off. And I think that the Chinese are unfortunately correct. Trump has not thought it through, as his supporter there is beginning to figure it out. It is going to be very painful. We are not going to be able to withstand the pain. And so then he'll have done damage, not just to the economy, but to the cause of tariffs. And even reciprocal tariffs with China, which we should have done a long time ago. Reciprocal is, hey, you do 10%, I do 10%. Not you do 10%, I do 145%. Because when you do 145%, as a lot of these folks are saying, and that businessman said it as well in the long version of the interview, 145% is an embargo that you can't, that's not a thing you could do. So like, let's say that he's selling a shirt, and let's say it's a high-end shirt, it's $100, right? So and normally he gets it from China for, make up a number here, $50, right? Okay, 145% tariffs. All of a sudden, that shirt's worth, his cost to him is near $125. But he's selling it for $100, so it doesn't make any sense. Well, he has to double it because that's usually how it works in retail. So now the shirt he was selling for $100, he's got to sell for $250? Well, nobody's gonna buy that shirt. So that's an embargo. That's not a tariff. Right? So now when if you believe in tariffs that are reciprocal or targeted towards specific manufacturing base, we're all screwed. That's never gonna happen after Trump, because the idea of tariffs is gonna be so poisoned after all this, after it crashes the economy, which is the next part that I'm super curious about, because I feel like either I'm missing something or the rest of the country's missing something, because we buy an extraordinary amount of stuff from China, and they're all going to be in essence embargoed. I don't think we realize the iceberg we're about to hit. Like everybody's like there's a little bit of panic in the business world. For small businesses, there are bigger panic, in affected industries, bigger panic. But the stock market, I'm shocked, is not cratering. Soon, I think there's going to be tons and tons of empty shelves, or products that are so expensive that they're totally unbuyable. So that's not a small amount of stuff that we buy from China. All right, let's see how it turns out, because my sense is this will be way more catastrophic than people realize. But the brother from Cuts is beginning to realize how catastrophic it is to his business. So let me go back to that example for a second. So why is he asking for 90 days? Because he's like, look, if I'm gonna buy from China, all of a sudden the $50 shirt is $125, I can't do it. So, and then when Jake Tapper asked him about, well, why don't you just buy from America? He's like, oh, we have been doing that in so long, textiles. In fact, not only are we more expensive in America, but unfortunately our quality has gone backwards. And the China and other places are very high tech, so their quality has gone up. This is not my words, that's his words, he's a Trump supporter, okay? And so he's got to go buy from somewhere else. So he's got to go figure out, hey, is there a price I could afford from Sweden or Cambodia? I don't know, any country that doesn't have 145% tariff. So he's in a panic right now, because if he can't, then no one's gonna buy his shirts, and he's gonna go broke. Like not in like 2 years from now, in like 2 months from now. And what happens if that happens on a mass scale, which I kind of think probably will happen very soon? You think we can withstand that? Nah, people are gonna be super angry. And Trump, he's a flip-flopper. He doesn't know anything. He throws things up against the wall and see if it sticks. And this ain't gonna stick. So he's gonna flip-flop, but a ton of damage is gonna be done. One more thing here, it's interesting, actually 2 more things. Because even his own supporters, like that brother voted for him, even though Trump talked about tariffs. Like there's a lot of things he didn't talk about. He didn't say, oh, I'm not gonna follow due process. So if you elect me, I'm gonna tear up the Constitution. I think he indicated that he hated the Constitution, didn't care about it, and wanted to terminate it. He in fact said it once, but I couldn't get anyone to believe me, right? I couldn't get anyone to focus on how much he hates the Constitution and doesn't care. He just wants to be an authoritarian leader. But what's interesting is that his own voters and supporters, even on things he did say, like, well, I'm gonna tariff the hell out of people, they didn't really believe him. Since he lies so much and trolls so much and just says such nonsensical things, they just started doing wish fulfillment, right? Like putting their wishes onto Trump, not really listening to what he's saying because 3/4 of what he says isn't true. Now come to find out, he actually did mean it about tariffs, and they're like, what the hell? I didn't know you really meant it. That'll totally destroy my business. If he knew about this earlier, would he have voted for Trump? I mean, unless he's an idiot and doesn't like his business and would like to go broke, he probably wouldn't have, right? So the fact that he's such an enormous liar and that his own voters don't believe him is such an interesting phenomenon, which leads us back to the original line that you saw in that clip. We're losing 5 million a day, and if we stop it, we start gaining money. No, we don't. That's not how it works. So we're not losing money. They're sending in products here. We pay for them and we pay a cheaper price than we would from anywhere else. And then we sell those products. So if you take a tariff and those products are actually bought, which they're not going to be because they're too high a price, then we would take money from a tariff, but we're not even gonna get that because it's essentially an embargo. So all that's gonna happen is that trade's gonna stop. So once the trade stops and we don't get any imports from China, do we then magically make money? No, we don't. He has no idea what he's talking about. He never does. Look, guys, we showed you the clip the other day. He doesn't even know what the Declaration of Independence is. He's like, it's all about unity and love and respect. No, it's not. It's the opposite of unity. It's declaring independence. Couldn't be more the opposite, right? We love the British Empire. No, we don't. That's why we declared war against them. Okay, so he knows nothing. You think that guy's gonna handle a sophisticated economic policy? That's why I feel bad for the guy because he's probably about to go broke, but when he's like, later in the interview, he's like, what's the plan? Please just tell us the plan. There is no plan, brother. I hate to break it to you. There is no plan.
There is no plan, and there really doesn't seem as if there ever was a plan. And Trump really feels like that isn't even his problem, that he needs to provide some type of plan. And I feel like I talk a lot about Trump's rhetoric because the way he speaks is very interesting to me. The words that he chooses to use, the way that he chooses to describe things to his voters, right? He uses words like reciprocal tariffs to mean one thing when it really is not the reality. He says things like it's 145% tariff when the reality is that it is more like an embargo. So he says a lot of things without explaining it. He almost changes the entire meaning of words, at least in the pop culture sense of politics, right? And I think a lot of that serves to confuse people, including the people who vote for him, including the people who hear the words that he says and really do believe him, right? Like they actually do think that the thing that he says, the thing that comes out of his mouth is, that's a fact, right? They really just, even at this point, at this stage in the game, 10 years after having dealt with Trump for so long, they don't understand that the things he says is not necessarily reality. And also, as far as the business owners, I do feel bad for them because they're dealing with this constant instability. I can't even make decisions for my own life, let alone my own business, without, wondering about what the country is going to look like a few months or a few years from now, right? It's very, very difficult for people to make big life decisions, such as like buying a house or even where to settle, because even the job market is so unstable, right? My husband works in in the tech industry kind of, and he's, Doge is just like looming in the corner, and it's very hard to move forward. And now these business owners, they're also experiencing their own version of that. You can't make business decisions when a lot of the things that were in place that stabilize the economy and stabilize the marketplace are no longer in place. Everything is up in flux right now. So people are just trying to get by from month to month, and that is not really a great way to run a business. And we saw it during the pandemic. So many businesses, especially small businesses, had to close down. And in this country, especially during the Obama era, there was a lot of push for small businesses to spring up and open in this country. Now we're seeing just the corporatists coming in and saying, we're going to scoop all this up and this is all ours now. And we have these big mega monopolies and Congress is not doing anything to stop them. So
What was shared over Signal then and now, however you characterize it, was informal, unclassified coordinations for media coordination and other things. That's what I've said from the beginning. At the beginning, it was left-wing reporters from The Atlantic who got a hold of it and then wanted to create a problem for the president.
Got a hold of it is an interesting way to put that, but that was Defense Secretary and former Fox News host Pete Hegseth defending the use of the messaging app Signal in his official capacity in the work he's doing over at the Pentagon. However, this isn't a news story, but it turns out that the extent to which the app was used in the Pentagon is a lot more than what we previously thought. Cenk, before we get into the details of this story, why is this an important story for the American people to care about?
Turns out that you might not want to pick a weekend Fox and Friends host to be the Secretary of Defense. If any story involves national security, it's this one. And they're leaking like a sieve. I want to point out a massive hypocrisy a little bit later in this story. But mainly the question that arises for me, and we'll dive into the details here, or the deets as the kids say, and see what it is. Because now I'm beginning to think maybe this isn't like America First or Israel machinations, etc. Just might be that Hegseth is like enormously incompetent. Like there might be a really simple explanation. But let's hear the so-called deets and see what we decide.
I got the deeds. I have all of it for you. Okay, so according to reporting from the Wall Street Journal, Hegseth had at least a dozen Signal chats going, many of which he started himself, even though the app has not been approved for discussing sensitive information. So here's reporting from the Wall Street Journal. In one case, he told aides on the encrypted app to inform foreign governments about an unfolding military operation, the people said. He also used the non-governmental message service to discuss media appearances, foreign travel, his schedule, and other unclassified but sensitive information, two people said. And the people that they keep referring to in the article, those are the journal's sources. Hegseth used the app to send messages both from an unsecured line in the Pentagon as well as from his personal phone. And it turns out, this was unknown before, that some of the messages from Hegseth were actually sent by his military aide, Marine Colonel Ricky Buria, who had access to Hegseth's personal phone. For instance, it was actually Buria who sent messages on Signal regarding the US attack on the Houthi militants in Yemen. It was, of course, after a journalist from The Atlantic was added to this group that we all became privy to all of this knowledge. The story went viral, and that led to an investigation at the Pentagon into the Pentagon's operations under Hegseth. In an attempt to get some kind of a fallout guy or a fall guy, Hegseth was able to keep his job, but National Security Advisor Mike Waltz did lose his job, and this move was panned by a lot of people, but it was seen widely as a move on Trump's behalf because he wanted to keep Hegseth around, right? That's a Trump appointee. That is a Trump sycophant. He's going to do whatever it takes to push and promote Trump's agenda and to say whatever he needs to say. Meanwhile, Mike Waltz, not so much. Mike Waltz did not agree with Trump on everything 100% of the time. And it seemed like Trump was just happy for an excuse to get rid of a guy like that. So here is more from the report. Among the messages posted in some of the other chats by Hegseth were his thoughts on personnel matters, Pentagon programs facing cuts, and details of administration national security debates. The texts authorizing aides to tell allies about military operations are among the most sensitive messages he sent. Instead of using the Pentagon's vast communications network, Hegseth preferred Signal to run the Defense Department's day-to-day operations, the people said. Among those he added to chats were members of his security detail, staffers in his personal office, and that of the deputy secretary, as well as public affairs aides. So there's a few obvious concerns with using this app for handling these very, very classified or at least sensitive information that is being passed and discussed in this app. So for one, these apps are susceptible to hacking. So potentially a lot of what is being discussed in these apps could end up in the wrong hands or just in the hands of people who are not authorized to have this information, which is most people, right? Including, Pete Hegseth's wife and brother and the journalist from The Atlantic. There are other concerns with the reporting the official reporting of the content of the apps, because some of Pete Hegseth's messages were deleted from the app or they disappeared before they could actually be added to the official record. And more from the Wall Street Journal says DoD personnel won't use non-DoD accounts or personal email accounts, messaging systems, or other non-public DoD information systems, except approved or authorized government contractor systems to conduct official business. So, Cenk, I know you have a lot to say about this. It is very concerning that the extent to which that this app has been used, even though it's not recommended for information that could be classified. And the things that they're discussing on here are, very, very high level information, very sensitive information regarding exact timing of military airplanes and missiles being dropped and things like that. So it is kind of scary, it is very scary. It's a matter of national security, which is funny because Trump likes to say that everything is a issue with national security, but this one actually is, and he seems to be brushing it under the rug, all in an attempt to just protect Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, that's really a good point, because later in the show, live 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern every day, we're going to talk about how he's going to try reviving Hollywood because it's a national security threat if they make movies out of Vancouver. Is it? Is that a national security threat? You know what's a national security threat? Hey, here's who we're bombing and when we're bombing them and what methods we're using. Oh, oops, it's in an unsecured place. That's an actual national security threat. Movies out of Vancouver, not as much. But so he doesn't care, but of course, we all know this. He doesn't care about any policy or anything that's real or national security. He just cares about what things look like, right? Hegseth, he's out of central casting. I like him. Vancouver, not out of central casting. Hollywood out of central casting. Hollywood invented central casting. We're going back there, right? We'll tell you later why he's obsessed with that and Alcatraz and stuff. Okay, but back to this story. So let's now note the hypocrisy. Hillary's emails, I can't believe it was in an unsecured place. Unsecured Hillary's emails. It is the greatest violation of national security ever. This is all non-secured. And what's interesting is that they chose to do, Hegseth is probably on TV crying about Hillary's emails about 2,000 times, right? And then he goes in, he becomes Secretary of Defense, and he's like, oh, let's do what Hillary did. Let's just go totally unsecured right away. Right away, don't even like, oh, it was an accident or it happened later after I got burned by the people in the internal system and there was something went, no. He's like, let's go illegal right away. And what's the illegal part? Number one, it's against the rules to go to an unsecured app, right? But also number two, a more illegal thing, something can be more illegal. Yeah, it could be a harsher sentence, etc. Is if you delete these things, because you're supposed to keep them as part of the record for the executive branch. And why do you think they're going on Signal? So they could delete them, so that people can't see them. Which, by the way, was the same reason that Hillary did it. And so we're like, I don't know if we're the only show left in America that is not biased, but it was wrong when Hillary did it. It's wrong when Pete Hegseth does it. But for Hegseth and Fox News and all those guys, right? Like, meltdown for years and years and years. But look, this is, so Hegseth does it now, Mike Waltz does it, they all do it. But remember, in the first administration, the minute they went in, the Trump kids did it, Ivanka did it, Jared Kushner did it, and he was in charge of Middle East policy. And they're like, I guess they love Hillary Clinton. They view her as a role model. And they're like, you know what? Anything she does, and maybe I was going to say that maybe they'll do speeches to the banks next, but that's just amateur hour. Hillary got like a couple $100,000 a speech. Jared Kushner was like, I got $2 billion from the Saudis. Eric Trump just yesterday was like, I got $2 billion from the United Arab Emirates. Corruption. Hunter Biden, you amateur. Hillary Clinton, you novice, okay? Taking it in the hundreds of thousands or millions. We're taking it in the billions. So all this is reality. What is like from here to the end of his term, is hardcore MAGA going to say about every story, yes, fake news, even though they all admit it. Everything is fake news. Hegseth is a genius and a military strategist. I saw him play Risk once. I can't believe that he started in Australia and New Zealand and he expanded out and won. Guys, he's the host on Fox and Friends on the weekends. Remember he threw the freaking axe in some stupid stunt that they did for Fox and Friends and threw it over the target and nearly killed the band guy, behind the target. This is not like some rocket scientist. And also, this is so absurd. It's like imagine if Bernie won and he's like, "Now my new Secretary of Defense, Brett Ehrlich from Happy Half Hour." I mean, Brett's only 2,000 times smarter than Hegseth, but it would be surprising. So you pick a clown, you get a clown. I'm beginning to think that that's the simple answer here. So that there isn't like some sophisticated, hey, is it the neocons or not the neocons? That exists in parts of the government. But for Hegseth, I think it's mainly like, anyway, I don't want to get into speculation about why he's a hot mess, right? But he's clearly a hot mess.
I kind of love the idea of Brett Ehrlich in our government. For better or for worse, at least it would be entertaining for a lot of people, including me. So there is one little addendum to this story that I want to get to quickly. So Trump insists that despite appearances, Pete Hegseth is actually doing a great job in his role as a defense secretary, even though he is wildly unqualified for that position. So reports say that just a week or so into Trump's second administration, the military, with Hegseth at the helm, ordered 3 freight airlines to stop 11 flights loaded with weaponry that were bound for Ukraine. And that isn't the story. The story is that this order created such chaos, not just in Ukraine, where the weaponry was bound, not just in Poland, where everything was supposed to be coordinated, but also in the White House, because Trump never told Hegseth to ground any of these flights. So the whole fiasco went beyond just a new administration settling in and getting their feet wet. It really was just a whole demonstration that communication within the administration was lacking, first of all. Also that the goals of the administration, however they were being communicated internally, not even talking about externally to us, but even internally, were poorly defined, and that the people that Trump had appointed into these high-level positions were wildly, as I said, unqualified for those positions. So that's just one last little thing. But again, Trump seems reluctant to get rid of Hegseth because, as I said earlier, he's kind of a Trump yes man. He has been loyal to Trump for a long time in his tenure at Fox News, and he has proven to Trump that I'll do whatever you want, and that's why he has the job he has.
Yeah, I actually think the second one's worse. He stopped these military aid going to Ukraine without any authorization. And everybody's like, what are you doing? Nobody told you to do that. Why'd you do that? I said, I don't know. Okay, let's start him again. Look, I don't know if I'm supposed to do the speculation or not, but I'm not saying it. Stoner Wolf, who's a Young Turks member on YouTube, is saying it. He said drunk people tend to leak a lot. Okay, that's kind of funny. Now, seriously, guys, I don't know if Hegseth's drunk at all. I have no idea. But I do know this, right? Now we have, he fired tons of his top aides. They've gone on shows like Tucker Carlson's, and everybody's like, what? Why were they fired? What does this have to do with anything? He's leaking like a madman on a bender, on Signal and everywhere else. He's giving authority to his assistant to do these things that he shouldn't be doing. And now he's canceling actual military equipment that needs to go to a war zone when he shouldn't be. There's no other way to describe that than hot mess, right? But I'm gonna go over to Bernie picking Brett as defense secretary. He's not just on Happy Half Hour. He's really good on Rebel headquarters. I like him there. Why did I give him the Trump hands? And was that a good Bernie? Probably not. Okay, anyways. All right, well, our national security is in danger. I guess we can have a laugh over it. All right, right, back on TYT, Cenk, Yaz, and a number of American heroes. Neil Evans for hitting the join button below. We appreciate you, Neil. Proud Progressive for gifting a membership on YouTube. You are proud indeed. We're proud of you. Ramon gifted 10. Then Drew Wilson gifted 20. You guys are awesome. We love you guys. I love this community, open-minded, open-hearted. We got Marjorie Taylor Greene tonight. We're asking you guys if we should interview her. That poll's on tyt.com. Everybody can vote. And then tonight, we will interview her and we'll tell her the results of that poll. So it'll be fun. All right, Yaz, what's next?
All right, let's get into this next story.
No tax on overtime.
All right, no tax on overtime pay. That was one of Trump's signature promises to the American people. And Republicans in the Senate are working to get it passed, or are they? We will have to see. Cenk, what do you think? Are they actually going to follow through on this promise?
Yeah, I would have said in the beginning, there's no way they're going to do this. But actually, there's something in this story that makes me think, maybe. I'll tell you why it's a maybe, why it might be a trick anyway. But most of all, they promised a great number of things, and I'll tell you the things that they have no chance on delivering on. And it's the things that they have a chance of delivering on. So a really interesting story overall. Let's get the details.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of times I want to be optimistic and be like, oh, maybe they will do something that they said they were going to do, but I'm more disappointed than I am not. But I try to stay open-minded. So according to the Wall Street Journal, there are two different versions of the proposal in the Senate right now. Here is the less generous version from Republican Senator Roger Marshall. The proposal is capped at $10,000 for individuals and $20,000 for married couples. The break for overtime pay would start phasing out once individual adjusted gross income reaches $100,000 or when a married couple's income reaches $200,000. At the 22% marginal tax rate that applies to many taxpayers in this range, a deduction for $20,000 in overtime pay would save $4,400 in taxes. Okay, so that's one. That's the less generous one. This is the more generous proposal. I'm very surprised about who it comes from. So a bill from Senator Ted Cruz, Republican from Texas, and Representative Vern Buchanan, Republican from Florida, limits the break to $25,000 and denies the break to people above a high income threshold that is $160,000 this year. So the question is, even if this does get passed, how many Americans would actually be affected by this policy? And according to the Yale Budget Lab, about 8% of hourly workers and 4% of salaried workers regularly work overtime. So not a whole lot, but some. And to be fair, that is a campaign promise. But Cenk, I want to get your thoughts on this. What gives you pause with all of this?
Yeah, and so in the beginning, I was like, there's no way in the world they're going to do this, because if you just did a blanket rule on not taxing overtime, it would cost $680 billion to $1.3 trillion. So now remember, they already have around, it started with 4.5, it looks like they're up to $5.5 trillion in tax cuts for corporations and the wealthy. So they would have to layer this on top. So now we're talking about what, $6.8 trillion in tax cuts? And we haven't even gotten to the not taxing tips, which is another outlandish campaign promise that Trump had, because he was just giving out candy, right? Oh, I'm not taxing this, I'm not taxing that. So, but in order to do that, they've got to do some cuts. Even when they go to do a cut, as we'll tell you about later in the show, of like $230 billion on basically food stamps, people, including Republicans, are like, no, tons of MAGA guys get food stamps. You can't cut that. Okay, so Doge at most cut $130 billion. They're now struggling with a $230 billion. Where are you going to get the other $7 trillion? So this is absurd, right? But the only reason why they might do this one is because Trump, unless he's just going to absolutely raw dog them, he has to give one of his campaign promises to the average guy. and in a limited fashion. So he could say, yeah, I cut the taxes on tips, or I cut the taxes on overtime. One of those things. There's no way he's gonna do them all. And he doesn't care about them. That was just to win the election. The only ones he actually cares about, the tax cuts he cares about, are for corporations who are his donors and the wealthy. And he's wealthy and everyone he knows is wealthy. So those are locked in. So that's our base. You start with about $5 trillion in tax cuts for the rich to begin with. Then you're gonna layer these on top because the average guy is the very last priority. And by the way, Republicans, quote me on everything, okay? So if it turns out that he does all of the tax cuts for the average guy, tips, overtime, Social Security, etc., and he doesn't do corporate tax cuts and he doesn't do tax cuts for the rich, there's no, all right, but I'll eat my shorts. There's no way that's gonna happen. In fact, Trump has already said, he flirted with like, well, maybe we shouldn't cut taxes on the rich again. And then everybody beat him up. Sean Hannity was like, how dare you? Don't you know the Republican Party stands for the rich like me? And then like the day later, Trump was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Of course. The rich get everything first, right? So now all of that, but why might this one pass? Because what Yaz was explaining to you guys is that they've actually now reduced it so much. Hey, it doesn't apply to money, incomes above this. It doesn't apply to wages past that. So they narrowed it, and they got it down to what this latest proposal is about 25% of the original number. So if it's like $250 billion, that's still a huge number in the real world. But in a gigantic $5-6 trillion tax cut, they might think, I mean, who cares? We're blowing a giant hole in the deficit and the budget and the debt anyway. So throw that in there so we can brag about it. And remember, it's really limited, right? So that's why this one might not be impossible. We asked you guys in a poll on the live show. Live show at 6 to 8 o'clock every day. Then at 8 o'clock we're doing interviews like today with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Anyways, whether you guys think that there will be no taxes on overtime or not, I'm curious to see what you guys think. But like that, I know is the logical answer, but in this rare case, maybe this is the one that they give to the MAGA base because they limited it so much and it's not nearly as big as it used to be. So that's my theory on it. But look, if it turns out they don't give anything to the average guy and they give everything to the rich, I wouldn't be 1% surprised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was really my thought on the whole thing too, is, you were talking about how Trump is giving out tax cuts like candy. I mean, he just says whatever comes to his head and then that becomes policy. So we see for ourselves that there really isn't as overarching of a plan or a strategy in place as many of us would hope that there are. But I do agree, I figured that this is just a really easy campaign promise for him to keep, just so he can say, I did something for the working man, I did something for the average American, even though, what was it, 4 or 8% of hourly or salaried workers would actually feel the impacts of this, and with people who fall within the parameters. So there is some part of doing a job like this where you do feel like a bit of schadenfreude, or like, and I told you so. If you see that the administration is not following through on any of the plans that they said they were going to do for the American people, because you want to say, you know what, we told you this was going to happen. Why did you vote this way? Maybe don't do it again in the future. But at the same time, you do actually want good things to happen to the American people, right? So if something does get passed for them, I'm not going to be like, it's not enough, you do more, whatever, even though it really isn't enough. I do want to be able to celebrate something that happens good for the average American person, but I don't know. Yeah. This isn't as exciting as I would like for it to be.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a quarter of 8%, right? 8% of people are at least hourly workers, right? And they've now reduced the tax cut for those folks a quarter. So that's why it's like it's a tiny bit of a release valve and a fake promise kept, even if they do it, which I'm not sure they're going to. Okay, but guys, that's the number one thing that I want to leave you with is they're not even trying to balance the budget. So if you're MAGA or you're an independent who voted for Trump and you think, oh, no, they're going to magically cut $5-6 trillion from the budget, I bet there's waste, fraud, and abuse for that kind of number. You're in la la land. I will guarantee you 100%, quote me on it, never watch the show if I'm not right, they will not balance the budget any of the 4 years that Trump is in office. They won't come close. This year, they're gonna put this massive, massive hole in the budget. I mean, anywhere from $4 to $6, $7 trillion. Remember last time Trump added $8 trillion to the debt, more than any other president in US history. And this time he's saying, oh yeah, Trump won, hold my beer. I'm gonna add even more tax cuts for the rich and absolutely pulverize this budget. There is a 0% chance they're gonna balance the budget. So when I'm right about that, remember who told you the truth and who BS'd you. Because if there's right-wing shows out there now pretending that he's gonna balance the budget, that's a humiliating prediction. There's no chance of that. So let's see how this particular tax cut works out. But overall, we're all gonna have to pay for this later. He's the king of debt, and he's gonna pile on more debt onto America than any other president and stick us with the bill. That's what he's famous for, that's what he did in business, and that's what he's about to do to the American taxpayer. All right, we gotta take a break here. When we come back, is Donald Trump going to help Hollywood or destroy Hollywood? Well, we're full of deets today. We got the deets on that too, and later, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, we're about to make Hollywood great again. Take a look at this.
My fellow Americans and my peers of Hollywood, I recently met with our president, Donald J. Trump, who loves the entertainment business, wants to see Hollywood thrive and make films bigger and greater than ever before, as he says, and see productions come back to American Hollywood. The Hollywood that I fell in love with when I was a child and was honored to contribute to during my career.
All right, that was actor Jon Voight on X. He regularly does videos on that platform for all of his followers. And he's saying that Trump is on board with the initiative to make Hollywood great again because he loves Hollywood. He wants it to be great, just like it was back in his day. Cenk, we're gonna get into those deets that you promised. But of course, Trump loves the entertainment industry. He's an entertainer.
Yeah, well, as you'll see in a minute, his crazy rambling reason why he's doing this. He should have been in the movies. I know, dude, everybody knows you want to be famous. Congrats, you are famous. You're the president of the United States for a second time. But the insecurity continues unabated, and the lack of homework continues unabated. Did you talk to experts? Did you talk to movie industry executives? Did you talk to actors? Did you talk to anyone before you imposed a ludicrous 100% tariff? Do you know if that's actually gonna help the movie industry or hurt the movie industry? Here's the amount of homework he's done on it, and you all know it, even if you're MAGA, you know it. Zero, none. So let's find out what's actually gonna happen.
Yeah, well, Trump also has all of his acting credits. He was in Home Alone 2. He was in 2 Weeks Notice with Sandra Bullock and Hugh Grant, so good for him. But that's not what we're talking about right now. Jon Voight and I do seem to be in agreement that Hollywood needs to be a little bit revamped, that it's not as good as it used to be, although we probably have different ideas as to why. But here's more from him on what is wrong with Hollywood and sort of like what he plans to do about it. And you guys, it's a lot worse than any of us thought.
And many Americans have lost jobs to productions that have gone overseas. It's been very serious. People have lost their homes, can't feed their families. After meeting with many of the entertainment leaders, I have brought forward recommendations to the president for certain tax provisions that can help the industry. Some provisions that could be extended and others that could be revived or instituted. This would help the movie and television production and our beloved theaters that are so important to the American family experience.
So he didn't say a whole lot about what the issues are specifically that he's trying to address in Hollywood, nor did he say a whole lot about his plan to address these issues. He didn't elaborate very much on any of those tax provisions. The video was about 2 minutes long on X, and I showed you most of it. The rest of it was just him talking about what a great president and person Donald Trump is. Also, he said he puts Donald Trump up there as one of the best presidents this country has ever seen, right up there with Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. And then he also name dropped Sylvester Stallone and said, "That's my buddy." So that's nice. But speaking of Sylvester Stallone, him, Mel Gibson, and Jon Voight, they are Trump's special ambassadors to Hollywood. So everyone, Hollywood, we are in great hands there. But while this does feel like a ridiculous story, there is actually a little bit more to it. So Trump announced this week that he wants a 100% tariff on movies produced outside of the United States, a move that could irreparably damage the existing American film industry. So here's what he posted on Truth Social about all of this. The movie industry in America is dying a very fast death. Other countries are offering all sorts of incentives to draw our filmmakers and studios away from the United States. Hollywood and many other areas within the USA are being devastated. This is a concerted effort by other nations and therefore a national security threat. It is, in addition to everything else, messaging and propaganda. Therefore, I am authorizing the Department of Commerce and the United States Trade Representative to immediately begin the process of instituting a 100% tariff on any and all movies coming into our country that are produced in foreign lands. We want movies made in America again. Donald, I think we all just want free healthcare. We want healthcare for all. That's all anyone asks for. But among his detractors regarding this move is a right-wing commentator and author, Ben Shapiro.
Why? Just why? I'm sorry, if Hollywood is unable to lower its costs, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to go elsewhere and produce your movies. All movies and TV shows now, this has been going on for decades, are basically produced outside of Hollywood. Hollywood has emptied itself out, and that has forced them to actually move their own businesses to places like Vancouver in Canada, or go to other states like Georgia in order to film, or go abroad to Romania or Hungary or wherever else in order to film. So President Trump thinks that by radically increasing the cost on movie production in a time when streaming is already eating out the profit margins of all of the movie making industry, that is a very badly calibrated executive order.
So from the Truth Social post, the thing that Ben Shapiro took a special problem with was when Trump said that movies made outside of this country pose national security threats. So here's what he had to say about that.
So he's saying it's a national security threat for Romania to offer a tax incentive to film in Romania. I'm sorry, that is not even remotely a national security threat. It may be a threat to Tom Cruise's next paycheck, but that is not a national security threat. If Matthew McConaughey makes less money because films are being made, or a key grip in Hollywood has to travel in order to go film over in Budapest, that is not remotely a national security threat. We are emptying the term national security threat of pretty much all content.
So Ben Shapiro also asked, where's the demand for any of this, right? Nobody asked for this. This isn't what we wanted when we said that, we need foreign entities out of our government and or out of our influence, or out of our sphere of influence for the majority of Americans. And to that point, Ben Shapiro actually said, if you actually wanted to do something about foreign propaganda infiltrating the United States, do something about TikTok. So that's what he suggests. Cenk, this goes beyond movies and entertainment. For one, it talks to government control and government overreach into certain aspects. Also, this feels like maybe it's just it's a little too close for comfort to actually censoring Hollywood and the things that they're able to produce, and also stopping other films from coming into this country. And I just want to clarify, he's not saying that we're not going to be able to watch foreign films in this country anymore. He's trying to prevent Hollywood studios from going outside of the country, because a lot of movies get made in places like Canada, especially. So he wants to prevent that from happening more. And he said he's going to do a 100% tariff to prevent that. But Trump is also taking something that I think many Americans agree with, that Hollywood is not what it used to be. Entertainment frankly. I mean, there's a lot I could say about that, but that's not what the show is about. But it really, it's something that I think a lot of Americans have issues with right now. But instead of doing things that would actually help to address the issue, he's being a little bit disingenuous, and he's proposing a solution that isn't actually going to help anything that he says it's going to help. So, as is usually the case with him, he's offering a very misguided and disingenuous solution to a known problem. Cenk, I know you have a little bit more on this story.
Yeah, so I'm gonna tell you how it affected Hollywood and what they might actually do instead of this. But first on Ben Shapiro. So I agree and disagree. So is it a national security threat? That's a joke. Of course, it's not a national security threat, right? So Ben's right about that. And then he's like, we're inventing all sorts of national security threats. Brother, you started that with, oh my God, if you criticize Israel, that is a national security threat to America. So you started making that crap up a while back. So are you surprised now that he's just extending it to more things that are definitely not a national security threat? And then I love at the end of the video when he's like, no, the real thing to ban is TikTok. They're showing people what's actually happening in Gaza. If they find out what Israel's doing to starve those children to death, that'll be terrible for my beloved Israel. Okay, Ben, focus. We were talking about Hollywood. Okay, so he went on this tangent about how they gotta shut down TikTok. Okay, so anyways, he might actually care more about this because Daily Wire, they're making movies, which is crazy to me, but okay, God bless. And so it might affect his revenue, it might affect his business, and that's another reason why he might be upset about it. Okay, so that doesn't mean he's wrong. The 100% tariff, nobody even knows what the hell that means. Just Trump made that up. So is that gonna happen? No way. But for a second, the markets were worried. So what happened? Netflix was down 4%, Disney down 3%, Warner Brothers Discovery down 5%, Paramount down 2%, Comcast down 1%. But then they recovered. Why did they recover? Not in their entirety necessarily. It's a mixed bag there for those stocks because they realized, oh, maybe we can get tax breaks out of this. Because Trump was talking about a tariff that actually would hurt Hollywood. That's why the stocks went down in the beginning. Because wait, if we can't sell our movies in China, there's 4 times as many people in China as there is in America. They don't want those tariffs, right? So a lot of consumers in the rest of the world that they want to be able to reach. But when Voight started talking about tax breaks, everybody's like, tax breaks? Tax breaks for corporations. This is where everyone is in politics is aligned. And you thought Trump was a different guy, that he's anti-establishment? No, he's just doing the same exact corporate tax cuts, et cetera, that everybody else is doing. So Governor Gavin Newsom from California, obviously, jumps in and goes, California built a film industry and we're ready to bring even more jobs home. We've proven what strong state incentives can do. Now it's time for a real federal partnership to make America film again. POTUS, let's get it done. So he's reaching out to Donald Trump enthusiastically. So why is the Democratic governor of California doing that? Because they've decided they're gonna push for a $7.5 billion tax credit to movie companies. No, I'm a hard pass on that. Why? Like, look, brothers, make movies that make money. If you can't, that's your business, not my business. I mean, I love the movies. I love going to the movies, and mainly I like the popcorn. I know you guys are very surprised. Okay, but it's not my. Why am I financing giant movie companies? Because they take that money out of our paychecks. No, I don't need any tax credit going to Hollywood. I don't need it at all. Not only do we not need the tariffs, we don't even know what tariffs means when it comes to movies. So all this is junk. It's because Trump's a child. Me like movies. Me like movies. Me want to be in movies. You know, in Home Alone 2, they edited out the scene that he was in. He caught all sorts of feelings, like threatened to sue, got like really upset and made a whole big deal of, who cares? It's a stupid cameo in a stupid movie. Again, you're the president. Don't worry, brother. You're already really famous. But no, in his mind, movies are golden. I always wanted to be in movies. I'm gonna rescue Hollywood with 100% tariff. All I know is tariffs. I didn't study anything in school. That's why I still hide my grades. Okay. I think my opinion on this is clear. We gotta go. We're way late. Okay, thank you, Yaz. Everybody check out Modern Contacts podcast. That's Yaz's podcast. And Rebel Headquarters on YouTube, where she does some killer videos. All right, great to see you, Yaz. When we come back, we've got more madness for you guys. Now, Republicans going back to identity politics. Interesting. Okay, they all of a sudden they're getting their asses handed to them on the economy, and they're trying to start trouble with culture wars again. So we'll explain that, and then the Marjorie Taylor Greene interview. We'll be back.